This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for a special afternoon version of Beyond the Harvest with uh, Barbara. And Barbara, all I have to tell you is that when I'm feeling down, all I have to do is click on your website and look at some of the pictures. And it just makes me feel more alive. And even starting with this first one that we have up here of Vincent, I mean, it radiates color and life. And I never would have looked at pictures like this before.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what went into making something like Vincent, and also why is it in a private collection?
Well, that the private collection indicates that I have sold the painting.
Got it. Okay.
So anything that's marked private collection has been sold. And then I also have available on the screen when they are not sold.
Okay.
But so this is Vincent, and he's taking a moment before climbing an apple tree. And I met Vincent in 2015. He worked at a farm who has some orchards right near our farm. And he's from Jamaica. And I know he's got a son in Jamaica because Vincent asked me very early on if I would buy a law book for his son who is studying to become a lawyer. After I researched the book and I talked with a lawyer friend of mine, I found and purchased the book for him.
How nice.
So what I did on this particular podcast is I took a close-up of this painting as well. So that's just a close-up of the painting we just saw. So Vincent didn't return after that year that I met him. I'm not even sure why. Was he not a good worker? Did the farmer just not need him? This brings questions to my mind. Who decides which migrant workers go where? Did Vincent not to want to work for this farmer?
Interesting.
So I have painted, there was something about his way, his easy way, that I found I wanted to paint him again and again, and I still do. In these slides, we'll be looking at 8 paintings and 3 drawings of him. So this was the first one. They are, I present them chronologically. So this is the very first one I did of Vincent. And actually, it is one of my favorites of him. So this is Vincent on the right and White on the left. And this is late summer, and they're using their machetes to cut the grass underneath the trees. Every single tree has to be, the weeds have to be taken away. White is another fellow who I only met for one summer. And although both of these men continue to call me wherever they are, for the last 2 years, White worked on a flower farm and he loved it. And he liked to talk about American politics. And I must say, we were very like-minded there. Vincent moved onto an apple farm in the northwest part of New York. Both places a little too far for me to travel to see if I can visit them.
Sure.
But I really get a charge when they both call me. And they say, I just want to give you a shout.
Love it. That can mean so much to any of us on any day, just somebody just reaching out. So
it does. So this is Vincent, and he's gently dumping apples into the bin. The bucket they use, the top part, which looks kind of turquoisey, is metal, but the bottom is canvas, like a heavy duty canvas. And as you can see here, when they start packing, the rope on the bottom of the canvas gets hooked into the hook at the top of the bucket.
Mhm.
So initially they're just filling the turquoise part. It's really metal, the metal part of the bucket. And then as the bucket fills up, they lower the rope, which allows the apples to drop gently down into, so it really makes the bucket twice as
Wow.
large.
And it's gotta be heavy. I just can't imagine.
I wonder how much they weigh. It has to be at least 20 pounds. And when they're dumping the apples, I mean, they have to be very, very careful that they don't bruise them.
Sure.
So it all has to be done very gently. Always with the hat on this one.
I would think working out in the climate, you would be wearing a hat, so
Well, keep in mind that these fellows, they're picking in July and August, really very hot here. So picking in the heat, I remember it was in the 90s, speaking of the heat, the day I was visiting the men in the orchards, and he still has a wool cap on.
and those eyes are just so expressive.
And this happens to be one of the paintings, the Turret Gray paintings.
Okay.
I did add a tiny, tiny bit of blue into the cap that you can see on the right-hand side. Like it's a trim that's
Yep.
going around, but that's just a little bit.
I'm glad you pointed that out because I didn't see it before, but now, I can see it and it adds to it. Absolutely.
Mhm. So once again, Vincent hauling apples. He was on a flatbed truck. So after picking the bucket of apples, he had to get onto the flatbed truck and dump gently the apples into the apple bins. And I have a close-up of this as well, of his hands and the rope.
And you can see how that rope is sort of frayed. I mean, it's got to be very rough on his hands.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you can see the knots. They hook the rope around a metal device. It looks like a hook, and the knots stop it where he wants it to either be lowered, the cloth to be lowered, or to be raised. So this next one is quite different. I call this H2A Vincent. H2A is the name of the law that allows them to come in on the visas from different countries. And I started this project creating 12 by 12-inch paintings. And I was thinking about the ID cards the workers have to have. So I made these paintings in a sepia tone with charcoal, and I included text behind their heads, words and sentences running into each other with an occasional emphasis on a word or a phrase. If you look closely, I created a fingerprint and a date of birth, as these items are on the ID they must carry. I tell them to make copies and keep the original someplace safe. I've heard stories of authorities taking their ID, then there is no recourse for them.
Wow.
In another podcast, I'll present these images of the 12 paintings because they're just very different from what I have been doing.
And it's interesting. When I looked at these last week after you sent them to me, I didn't even pick up the fingerprint. I was looking at Vincent, I was looking at the words behind him, and now that I see the fingerprint, it adds yet another detail that I hadn't noticed.
Hmm. And his birth date over on the
Right.
left-hand side, which of course is imagined on my end. Vincent and his blue wool cap.
He just looks like a very happy man, just doing a day's work, almost like whistle while you work.
Yes. And I believe it was 2017, I heard from White, and then I heard from Vincent, and Vincent was in the hospital because he had an appendicitis attack,
Oh my.
which brings to mind, once again, how is their health care when they're here in the United States? Who takes care of that? Endurance. As the day moved on, the workers get weary, and I saw Vincent just looking up into the apple tree, knowing he had to take his bucket and climb the tree to pick the apples once again. All I could think of the endurance that the workers must have. They work from dawn to dusk. And in the summertime, dusk isn't until 9 or 9:30 at night. So sometimes they're working from 7 o'clock in the morning, well past 9 o'clock or 8:30.
And how many of us complain when we have to work 15 or 20 minutes over, you know? And here they work, long, enduring days. I love it.
So this is Wolf pencil on illustration board. Wolf pencil is a combination of charcoal and, I always forget this, charcoal and graphite. So it's combined in the pencil. And after seeing a Charles White exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art, I saw that he used Wolf pencil, and he also did drawings of common people, and he exaggerated their hands. So I kind of adapted that to what I started doing when I started drawing. And Vincent is one of the first drawings I did, and exaggeration of the hands. Another drawing, the image that we saw prior to this, in full color, I really liked the composition and the angle that I caught him at. And so I decided to give this a try with the pencils on illustration board. This one is not too big, it's 16 by 20.
I'm just amazed every time I look at these, how my mind thinks. Um, and as I've said in previous podcasts, you know, I never thought about how my food got to my table other than the fact that I went to the grocery store and bought it. Um, but I'm becoming more conscious of it, uh, and realizing that sometimes, when there's a limit on produce, sometimes it has nothing to do with anything other than the weather, um, that could even kill crops, um, or the fact that they don't have enough farm hands to gather the crops. So, just gives you a whole different level of understanding.
Yes, yes, this is true. I know throughout the country, last year because of COVID and because of the tough way that these workers have to get into this country, that farmers were plowing product into the ground because they didn't have people to pick them.
Wow.
And that happened in several states, actually. So that's the 8 paintings and 3 drawings of Vincent that I've done, and I am sure I'm not done painting him. There's just something about him that keeps calling me back. So now we're going to look at, oh wait, no, this is the last one. This is a very small, well, for me, drawing. Again, it's the wolf pencil on illustration board. It's 10 inches by 14.5 inches. And it's just his dear, beautiful face that's full of character.
And I know we're guessing at their age, but this type of work can actually weather a person, so they may not be as old as they look, or they could be. But um, you know, we can't assume unless we actually know.
Right. Most of these fellows are over 50,
Wow,
especially when they come and they have their son with them, who's probably in their late 20s.
interesting.
So the next worker I have done a few paintings and drawings of is Peaches. And he's tall and lanky, and he works very hard. He is carrying, in this painting, he's carrying posts that would be pounded in the ground for the tomato plants to be secured to. He always wears a bandana. Peaches picking apples.
I don't know if I'd want to stand on that ladder.
Well, they have been known to fall off of the, ladder, or break the ladder, or fall out of the tree. So no, they're very, very long ladders. I don't know how long they are exactly, but they're more than 8 feet long for sure. And as the ladders, one end is like the bottom that is on the ground in this painting is wider than the top.
Okay. Interesting.
So this is Peaches up close and personal. And by the way, I believe they make up names for each other. I don't think Peaches is his real name, as I don't believe Macintosh, who I've painted several times, is his real name.
Well, we all seem to get a nickname, when we're working or amongst our family members. So I can see that happening.
So when I work outside, I always wear a bandana, not quite the way he does, but I have a lot of bandanas. So I have them available to do farm work. And I gave him a bunch of bandanas because he always wears one, always. So this is another one of the ID series, the H2A, that we looked at a couple of minutes ago. I wanted it to resemble the ID that they have to carry, and part of the text here tells how he lost his mother during the time he was in the US working. Of course, invented fingerprint and birth date.
And for these people to come this far, obviously, when there's a family emergency, tragedy, um, they're stuck here. They can't, it's not easy for them to just pick up and go back home. They have to finish their job. That had to have been very difficult for him.
Yes. So during COVID, I found large canvases too much to concentrate on. So I started this series called Hands That Feed Us, and they're small. This is only 10 by 8 inches. I've created 7 of these small paintings so far. And this is Peach's hands with his machete in one hand and the homemade tool made of a branch that he carved to help stand the weeds as he trims underneath the apple trees.
The hands that feed us, and they sure do.
Yes, these have I've shown them with I've shown a couple of them with a gallery in Saugerties, New York, and they seem to be selling quite well, actually.
That's good.
And the last one I have is Peaches. Now the image on the left is a full drawing, wolf pencil on illustration board. It's 20 by 30. And I just put in a clip of a close-up of him because I think it's difficult to appreciate
Absolutely.
just from a distance.
So, all these that are available, if any of our listeners are interested in purchasing them, how would they go about that?
They can reach me through my website, which I actually have on this next slide. There's a contact form at my website that people can fill out and inquire as to pricing, etc. Yeah.
Well, as I was telling Barbara last week when she sent me these pictures, um, as I was going through them, I started creating my own story in my head, um, and I found them to be so interesting because typically, if I walked into a gallery and saw these pictures, I wouldn't be drawn to them. And nothing against how they're painted or anything else. I like very modernistic art. And so if I went to a gallery and I had a choice, I probably would have gone in the opposite direction. I'm glad that I got to meet Barbara and get to understand her paintings because now I look at art totally different. Um, I don't just look at it and say, oh, that's a pretty picture. You know, I look at it and I find something in it. And it's a first for me. And so I have to thank you for that because I can look at these pictures and see something different every time I look at them.
Good. That's terrific.
So I'm hoping our listeners are enjoying this. I know that a lot of you are catching us on YouTube and also on the audio version. And if you're on the audio version, if you want to reach Barbara, you can go to her website, which is www.barbaramasterson, all one word, .com. And if you didn't pick up on that in the bio of today's show, it will also have her website there. And I encourage you go out and look. And if you're in New York and you're one of the galleries that has her paintings, I know they would welcome you in their doors. And you know, you're inspiring many people. I've read some of the comments where people are saying, no, maybe I should go back to painting. Maybe I should go back to drawing. And
Good.
I think
Good.
that's excellent. So we'll do this again in 2 weeks. I want you to stay well.
Thank you.
You know, spring is, here, but I also understand that we're due for snow this week again. So
Yeah.
there's gonna be a little bit of everything. But
That's true.
soon these workers will be back, and when we see them in our towns, um, I think we have to give them a high five. We have to be happy that they're there and thank them for all they do.
Good point. Very good point.
Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon, Barbara.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Sure. Bye bye now.
Bye-bye.